You know, sometimes a story breaks that feels like it's straight out of a spy thriller. And over the last 48 hours, that's exactly what's happened. We're seeing a flood of reports that suggest a geopolitical swap of absolutely staggering proportions. We're talking about a deal that could tie the fate of Ukraine directly to the fate of Iran, with Russia and the United States pulling the strings. We need to break this down because if what we're hearing is true, it could literally reshape the entire global landscape. And that brings us to the one question that cuts through all the noise. Is the future of Ukraine really being decided not on the battlefields of the Donbass, but in some quiet meeting room in Miami? Is Iran the bargaining chip that Vladimir Putin is putting on the table to finally get what he wants in Europe? Now, the proposal being reported is as simple as it is absolutely terrifying. And you need to stay till the end because some shocking things I'm going to reveal in this explainer. Let's get back to it. All right, so here's how we're going to unpack this whole thing. First, we'll get into the Miami bombshell itself. Then we're going to go inside that secret meeting, we'll figure out the incredible price of the intelligence being offered, and then look at the massive dilemma this creates for the White House. We'll see how the world is reacting, with panic, frankly. And finally, we have to ask the big one. Are we watching the first draft of a new global map being written? So, from what we're told, this all kicked off last week, and not in some war room or gilded palace, but far, far away from any front line. While everyone's attention was glued to the brutal war in Ukraine and the escalating strikes in the Persian Gulf, a secret back channel was supposedly opened, and three men met behind closed doors in Miami. The first person at that table was reportedly this man, Kirill Dmitriev. Now, on paper, his job is to run Russia's giant sovereign wealth fund, but in reality, he's considered one of Vladimir Putin's most trusted back-channel envoys. Think of him as Moscow's unofficial backdoor to the Trump administration. When the Kremlin has a sensitive message to deliver and they want to bypass all the usual diplomatic red tape, Dmitriev is often the guy who carries it. This second man in the room? Steve Witkoff. His official title is President Trump's Special Envoy for the Middle East. His job is to manage the incredibly volatile situation in the Persian Gulf. Now, his being there tells you something really important. This conversation wasn't just about Europe. No. This was about connecting two of the world's most dangerous conflicts. And finally, the third man at the table, Jared Kushner. You know him, senior advisor, the president's son-in-law, and a key architect of this entire foreign policy. His alleged involvement means this wasn't just some casual, exploratory chat over coffee. No way. This was a conversation happening at the absolute highest level of the US government. Okay, so what was actually on the table? What was this meeting all about? Well, sources are claiming that Dmitriev didn't come empty-handed. He came with a very, very specific proposal, a quid pro quo, a this for that would directly tie the fires in the Middle East to Russia's war aims in Ukraine. Now, to really get the deal, you first have to understand the leverage Russia has built. Analysts are calling it a war of signals. It's brilliant and terrifying. Look at this timeline. It reportedly starts when Russia launches the Kyiv satellite for Iran, basically giving Tehran eyes in the sky. Then, it's alleged a real-time tactical data feed was switched on. And what happens next? A US base in Kuwait is hit with shocking precision. And then, unconfirmed reports say the location of an American aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, was handed over to Iran. The message here is crystal clear. This isn't just sharing info. This is loading the gun for someone else. This is the weaponization of intelligence. And this so-called war of signals has had devastating real-world consequences. When an Iranian drone hit that US facility in Kuwait, 6 American service members were killed. Now, intelligence sources are saying that the precision of that attack, it suggests the coordinates had to have come from a major space power, someone like Russia. So the message being sent to the White House, whether they say it out loud or not, is this: we have the power to hurt you, and we have the power to make it stop. And that brings us right to the heart of this alleged quid pro quo. Some are calling it the grand bargain, and it is brutally simple. Russia's offer, as you can see, is this: we will immediately stop all intelligence support for Iran's attacks on US forces. We'll turn off the tap. In exchange, the US makes one concession: cut off all intelligence support for Ukraine's defense. It is a direct trade, American lives in the Middle East for Ukraine's survival in Europe. So you have to ask, what would Ukraine actually lose? I mean, how bad could it be? Well, since day one of this war, US intelligence has been called Ukraine's oxygen. It's everything. It's not just about getting weapons, it's about knowing exactly where to point them. They would lose real-time data on where Russian command centers are. They'd lose targeting data for their advanced HIMARS rocket systems. They'd lose the locations of Russian ammo dumps. They'd lose the early warnings of missile strikes that have saved countless civilian lives. Almost every military analyst agrees. If the US were to just turn off the lights for Ukraine, it would be a catastrophic knockout blow. The war would likely end, and it would end on Russia's terms. You can just imagine the dilemma this proposal creates inside the White House. It's this massive internal battle, pitting President Trump's famous transactional, deal-making instincts against these incredibly stark warnings that are coming from his own intelligence community. I mean, on one side, you have a president who sees the world as a series of deals. He's promised to end the Ukraine war and end it fast. And you can see from this post, he's deeply frustrated with NATO allies, even calling them cowards for not helping the US secure the Strait of Hormuz from Iran. So from that point of view, you can almost see the logic. Sacrificing an ally that he feels isn't pulling its weight in order to save American lives, well, that could look like a pretty pragmatic deal. But then on the other side, you have the pros, the intelligence community. And this quote from CIA Director John Ratcliffe says it all. At a recent hearing, he was blunt. I don't take Vladimir Putin at his word. The CIA, the NSA, the entire intel world is reportedly screaming that any deal like this with Putin is a trap. It's completely unreliable. He could easily just take the prize, Ukraine, and then quietly turn the intel tap back on for Iran a few weeks later. It is a classic textbook intelligence trap. So while this debate is reportedly raging inside the White House, the rest of the world is not just sitting around waiting to see what happens. Just the reports of this meeting have sent absolute shockwaves through global alliances, especially in Europe. The word being used to describe the feeling in places like Berlin, Paris, and Warsaw is dread. Absolute dread. For America's allies in NATO, this is literally their worst-case scenario. The fear is that the United States will just go around the entire alliance structure, cut a private backroom deal with Moscow, and decide the fate of European security without a single European in the room. One senior EU official, who obviously didn't want to be named, called the reported Russian offer outrageous. And that single word just captures the gut reaction. This isn't just a strategic disagreement for them. It's a sense of genuine alarm that America's promise of collective security might actually be for sale. And Russia? What are they saying? Well, exactly what you'd expect. They're denying everything. Kirill Dmitriev himself said the reports are fake. The Kremlin put out statements talking about how it's a loyal friend to Iran. But this right here, this is the classic Kremlin playbook. Publicly, it's all about unbreakable friendship and loyalty. But privately, they are allegedly in a Miami hotel room offering to sell that exact same friend down the river to get their main prize, Ukraine. So where on earth does this leave us? Well, we are clearly at a potential turning point. The wall separating the war in Ukraine and the conflict in the Middle East has been smashed. The two are now explicitly linked. And if a deal like this goes through, the consequences will ripple far, far beyond either one of those regions. Look, if you were briefing a top policymaker on this right now, here are the 4 key risks you'd put on their desk. Number 1, intelligence becomes just another currency to be traded, and our alliances become purely transactional, not based on shared values. 2, it sets a terrifying precedent for betrayal. It signals to every single US ally from Taiwan to Israel that American support can be negotiated away. 3, it creates massive global instability by linking conflicts that were once separate. And 4, it would shatter US credibility. The full faith and credit of an American security guarantee would be broken, maybe for a generation. What this whole episode really exposes is a fundamental shift in how modern great power conflict works. We are literally watching the war of signals replace the war of tanks. The most powerful weapon today isn't just about firepower anymore. It's about leverage. It's about the ability to use a piece of tactical intelligence in one part of the world to win a massive strategic victory in another. And that leads us to the final and frankly most chilling question of all. Now, the US has reportedly rejected this specific offer, at least for now. But was the Miami meeting just the opening bid? Was it just the first draft, the first attempt to sketch out a new global map where spheres of influence are bought and sold and allies are treated as disposable assets? I guess the signals coming from the Strait of Hormuz in the skies over Kyiv in the next few weeks, they're going to tell us everything we need to know. We are going to be tracking every signal coming out of Washington and Moscow on this story. Thanks for joining us for this explainer. For ongoing analysis of the critical stories that are shaping our world, make sure you subscribe to the channel.